Welcome back, guys, to another video, and Farhi here from awesometuts.com. And what I want to talk about in this video is a concept that we already tackled, and that is when I showed you that these variables here actually are just pointers to memory spots which contain these definitions or that contains our objects. So based on that, I am going to create here a void function which I'm going to call change player. And this function is going to take the player as an argument. So it's going to take player and I'm going to name it P. And yes, we can do this. We can pass objects as parameters. We can even return them. So instead of void, I can type here player so that we need to return him. And we can only do that if we have already declared this class. So we have created this class. It exists in our project. Otherwise, we cannot do it because we don't have the player inside of our project. And here I'm simply going to change the name. I'm going to say p dot name is equal to, and I'm going to say change the name in the function. So change the name in the function. So what is this going to do? Well, this is going to do the following. When I type here or create it, I've already created the night player and it has the name night health 1. If I go here and type night dot player info, and now I call my change player function and pass the night inside of it. And again, I call night info below that. I want to separate these with a line and I can use print like this. And inside of these quotes that I forgot to mention, we can use a backslash and n. This is new line. This means new line. It will only give us a new line and separate everything. Even though it will work without it, but yeah, this is how you can use a new line to separate things. So what do you think is gonna happen when we do all of this? Well, first we are gonna create a player, object called night, which has these parameters, which will make the name night and health 1. And then we are gonna change that inside of this function and then we are gonna print it again. So let's see the outcome. So if I go here, hit run, we see that player name is night and player's health is 1. Below it, we see player name is change the name in the function and player's health is 1 because we did not tackle the health. But the point is that we have passed this night inside of this function. It has changed its property. And what does this mean? Well, again, I am going to simply use the highlight tool. It means that here we have P1 and here we have argument A1. P1 is pointing to this reference in the memory. The argument that we are passing, so when we pass, this argument requires a P, which is a player. So when we pass P1 here, what does that mean? When we change P inside of the function, so when we change P, so we change it, P is equal to some other value. I'm just typing P is equal to P, but actually this here represents this change that we did right here. So when we changed the value of that object inside of this function, we're actually changing this reference because when we pass our P here, it is actually pointing to the same reference. So they are simply changing that same object. Now, why is this important to know? Well, because of this, let's say I go here and I type void change number like this. And I go here and type int a and I say a is equal to 3. This is the difference of passing things as a value and passing things as a reference. So if I go here and I type this, I'm going to comment all of this out. And I am going to type here int c is equal to 30 and I'm going to print c. After that, I am going to call change number passing c, which is going to put it now to be equal to 3, right? Yes, right. So again, I am going to take the print statement and print everything here, but I am going to separate everything with a line. So what do you think is going to happen now since we are using this integer? So its value is 30. We are printing that value. Then we are changing it inside of the function and printing it again. Let's take a look. Let me clear the console. And when I hit the run button right here, notice what is happening. Do you see the difference? We see 30 here, we see 30 here. But we pass this as an argument and we set it to be equal to 3, what is going on here? Well, it is going on that this int c is not an object. It is not passed as a reference. It is actually passed as a value. What does that mean? It means that, let's assume that this int c is pointing to some memory. Let's assume that. We are not passing that reference which points to that memory, same as for the object that we did. We are only passing the value. So we are passing the c's value here inside of the function. And notice I have changed it to 3, but again, it is printing here 30. So this is that difference. This is called, this right here that you see is called passing a value. So we are passing arguments as values, but here, when we passed our night, we are passing that as a reference. That means that this night reference is pointing to one memory or one spot in memory, but when we pass it as an argument, this argument right here is pointing to that same spot. So when we change the properties of that argument, which is this one right here, we're actually changing that same memory spot, which will in terms, it will affect that night object or that night reference to that memory. So we saw what happened. When we printed here, we saw that it printed the name as night, but after we have changed it to this value right here that we have, well, programmed, and we printed after that, we saw that it has this, or it had this change. But using this int c, which is equal to 30, then we have printed it and it was equal to 30. Then we change this value. So we pass that c as an argument and we change it here. So it's equal to 3 now. But when we have printed it again, it was equal to 30 as we just saw. So again, this is another very important concept to know that these variables, integers, doubles, floats, they are passed as a value. They are not passed as a reference. So when you pass that same variable, you're not actually changing it inside of the function. You are changing only the value that's being passed. But when you pass an object, as we did here, you are changing that spot in memory. So if you are pointing to that spot with another variable, like in this case, night, then that change will affect the night variable, same way as we just saw earlier. So this is a really important concept to know later on in game development when you create functions that you pass in objects and you want to manipulate them. Maybe you pass variables such as integers, doubles, and floats. So it's really important to know what everything is or what is going on when you actually pass those objects. And again, I did not saw anybody cover this, even on YouTube, on Udemy. And I took this to cover it a little bit deeply before we dive into game development, which will make your game development life much easier. So this was it for this video, guys. Fahi here from awesomedudes.com, signing out.